The Lead. Sponsored by Hospital Discount Pharmacy, Lavish Boutique, Lavish Coffee, Jasper Veterinary Clinic, Jasper Bone and Joint, and Carl Cannon Chevrolet Buick GMC.
Welcome everybody to The Lead. I'm Greg Tinker, your host, and we are delighted today to have as our guest Ricky Bowen. And Ricky, welcome to the set, and also congratulations to you being named the new head coach at Sumiton Christian School.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
How did that come about?
Well, of course, I graduated from Sumiton Christian in 2005, and then went on to Mississippi State, and then I've been back teaching there, and over the last 10 years, and then also the last 2 years I've been the director for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So Coach Blair had told me that he was going to retire, which he's one of my closest friends. Matter of fact, that's actually his jersey behind us. So it's really kind of funny because in this morning I was actually looking at doing like a shadow box to give him his jersey and something like that, something nice for him. But Coach Blair is one of my not only is he my coach, but he's also been a mentor and one of my closest friends. And I guess it was the Monday right before exams was about to start. He called me that morning on my way to school, and he said, I don't know why we've been looking and talking about other people. He said, you're the obvious choice. And I had actually been helping him like try to find the next head coach and kind of putting some feelers out for him. And I'd really never thought about it or considered it. Matter of fact, people had asked me, and I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. Because I'd been training and coaching baseball players and athletes and been very successful, and it was very rewarding, but really never thought about pinning myself down and tying myself to one school in particular. And when he asked me, it was really difficult to say no. And then that day was actually the FCA Home Run Derby. So we had all these kids from different high schools, and we weren't actually supposed to do it at Sumiton Christian. Jasper was redoing some lights. Dora was redoing an irrigation system. Corner was redoing the entire outfield. Gardendale ripped their entire field apart to turf it. And so we had to do it at Sumiton Christian. And the whole day as I was setting things up, I was, just kind of in thoughtful prayer about, I've got to make this decision. And I was watching the clouds roll in because we had like an 80% chance of rain at the time of the Derby. And anytime you do an outdoor event like that, you're always terrified of the weather. And I'm watching the clouds, and they get just about to where Dora High School is, which is, a stone's throw from Sumiton Christian. And I watched the wind change and the wind push around, and I was kind of like, okay, God, I hear you, I see you.
It was definitely a sign from the heavens.
Right.
Yeah.
And then shortly after the Derby, he told a bunch of the kids, and several of them that I've trained, and a couple that have gotten scholarships to, one in particular that's going to UAB, they kind of walked up to me and they were, just say it's you, and again, it was, my head was saying, don't say anything, don't give anything away. And I kind of smiled and didn't really say much, just kind of smiled at them, and they got excited, and just things just kind of started to happen. And my wife was like, this could be a really good thing for you. I mean, it could be something where you could now coach. I could coach my son, who's 8 now, at the high school level, and it would just be a really good opportunity to pour into a lot of kids, and instead of being so widespread like I was with FCA, really go a lot deeper with the individual kids on that team. And so shortly after I agreed, and we got all the details worked out, and then when they announced it, I think the next Thursday they announced it, we were already headed to the beach, so I was out of town for the official announcement, which may have been a bad thing because my phone just rang off the hook for a while. But the outpouring of love and support from my former teammates in high school, from alumni, the board, it's coaches in our area that I've grown closer with over the last few years, doing Bible studies with them and their teams. It was so amazing and so humbling. I think the funniest thing though was Coach Ware at Jasper. He said, you're about to. He said, congratulations. I said, thanks. Now what do I do? And he jokingly said, "Well, just remember that you went from being the guy that wasn't a coach that knew everything about baseball to now you know nothing because you're the coach." And
He has a good way of summing things up, doesn't he?
I said, that's probably that's tying it up in a nice neat bow, probably better than anybody could. But it really is. It's amazing. And last night, Coach Blair officially, at the end of the banquet, officially introduced me, and I got pretty emotional because it's hard to imagine Sumiton Christian without Lance Blair. He's been and I'm going to try not to get emotional about it now. Maybe I'm cried out, I guess. It's hard to imagine that place without him because he has been so instrumental. I mean, 23 years, 22 years making the playoffs, a state title, multiple runs to the semifinals. But more than that, the impact that he's had on his players and on that community, on that school, it's unbelievable. And honestly, one of the coolest moments to me, I wasn't even involved in, but at the home run derby, Trent Mummy, who played with me, ended up, being a Gold Glove winner at Auburn and playing in the minor leagues for the Orioles and all that. Matter of fact, his dad Earl coached us when we were younger. Trent transferred right after I graduated, and I know that kind of, not that it hurt Coach Blair, but it always kind of seemed like something that was unfinished. And Trent came back and coached this year, and that meant so much to him. But then at the Derby, Trent offered to do a guest round where he actually hit in the Derby, and Coach Blair threw to him for a round. And it was kind of, to me, it was a nice ending right there because nobody else other than a few of us knew what was coming. But also, it was amazing how God kind of orchestrated all those things at the right time, at the right place. And some of that might have been so that I had some closure and clarity, but also just, I think, for the peace of Coach Blair, knowing that he could walk away from the legacy and the ministry that he had built as the head coach.
Yeah, because everybody around here who knows anything about high school baseball, when you say Lance Blair, automatically you say Sumiton Christian. And when you say Sumiton Christian, especially baseball, you automatically think Lance Blair. It's one and the same. And so you are indeed inheriting a program that he has built, and you're a part of that. And I love the continuity of that. You were a member of his state championship team in '04, is that correct?
That's right.
And MVP of the state that year, and all-state honors that year. And following on the heels of that, ended up at Mississippi State. Before we go there, you have been doing FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, last couple of years. And so tell us, just in synopsis form, tell us about that. Many people know, but others don't, the purpose of that, and then your involvement in that, and now the change that will have to take place.
Right. So the Fellowship of Christian Athletes is an amazing ministry opportunity. It's honestly probably the most direct line that any church could really have right into a school setting and environment. The way I was doing things as the director is I was going straight into teams and to coaches, and we were doing Bible study. And originally it was kind of character-based things where we were kind of tying that with scripture and examples from the Bible. And then we actually started going through curriculum stuff where we went through, Rick Burgess had the How to Be a Man series and Christ-centered masculinity, and going in and teaching those characteristics and those, but from a biblical perspective to our athletes and our coaches, just sitting in there and hearing that. It was amazing how impactful that really was. And honestly, until the very end of the year and until I started to kind of transition into this new role, I didn't realize how much that meant to some of these folks. And it's been amazing. It's a great opportunity. We're looking actually right now for a new director to take my place. When I took over, we had 3 FCA huddles, which is what we call the Bible studies. We had 3. We're up to 28 that happen throughout the course of a year. And they're seasonal, so like a football huddle will end at the end of a football season and a basketball will begin. But especially at Jasper this last year with especially Coach Burns, man, what an amazing time. Getting to know that. It's really, I hate that I'm not going to be a part of that anymore. I really wish I could figure out how to be still because it was such an amazing time. getting to know those guys, being in that locker room with those coaches and the players, and just seeing them grow up as a team and mature into the team that they became at the end of the year, to have the run they had, but to see them love each other the way that in a team setting, the way I really think that Christ wanted us to love each other and care for each other as brothers in a church type community. It was just an amazing thing to be a part of. And again, I hate that I'm not going to be doing that anymore, but we are actively searching and looking for somebody. So if anybody's seeing this, hears this, and is interested, please reach out to me, because like I said, we are hoping to find someone soon to take up that mantle and move FCA forward, because it's growing rapidly. And I think we have some people in place for continuity until that person is found.
Sure.
Or I guess I should say called to that position. But it's been amazing, and I'm going to miss it. But I think this direction is where God has led me and my family. So
Sure.
I'm also excited about the new opportunity.
Sure. Well, you've laid the groundwork in FCA for that to have the continuity. And so once the leader's in place, it should carry on really uninterrupted.
Absolutely.
Let's go back and begin kind of here. You grew up in Jasper and Little League here. And so as a youngster, you learned to love the game. And so as you were playing ball growing up and you knew that you loved it and you had ability, were your thoughts kind of all along from a kid, this is something I'd love to do the rest of my life?
I would say from a very young age, I loved it. I liked other sports. I never really got into them. I couldn't enjoy practicing them, but there was something about throwing a ball and hitting what I threw at, even more so than hitting, because everybody falls in love with the hitting side of baseball. There was something almost intoxicating about I'm looking at something and I throw something and I hit it perfectly. It just kind of captivated me. And so from a young age, I remember I was at Park School and we were in the 4th grade, and they had us do this thing where it was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everybody did firemen and astronauts. Well, I did a baseball player. And I remember I drew a picture of myself, and it was like almost life size, because you're a tiny little 4th grader. And I was in a Braves jersey, because that was right around the time the Braves had just won the World Series, and so I guess that would have been 95 or something. And so I did that, and then all the way through. But I was really blessed and fortunate to have great coaches and good, strong Christian men that were just really trying to teach the game and how to conduct yourself on a field. I go all the way back to people like Randy Key and Jeff Grice, C.W. McGee. He was a huge instrumental part. It was almost like a second father to me. And then to go to middle school, and I get to play for you in the 7th grade. And coach, that's where I met Coach Blair, and then Coach Sasser. And then halfway through freshman year, I ended up transferring to Sumiton Christian. Coach Blair had taken that job there. My brother had transferred, and I ended up over there. But from a young age, growing up in the park, before travel ball is what it, and I know that's a whole nother conversation.
Sure.
But before all that, everybody was there. Everybody was playing, and kind of the whole youth world revolved around those parks. And then on a Wednesday it was the churches, and Sunday was church, and that's where you really became friends with people.
Right. And
it was a huge part of the early Coach Sasser used to do those camps and stuff. Birmingham Southern would come, and Coach Shoup, who was a former Mississippi State guy under Coach Polk that I played for, he would do these camps and clinics in Jasper, and Mom and Dad always made sure that if I wanted to go, they always said if I worked hard and I would actually practice what I was being coached to do, that they would keep paying for me to go. So I guess I took them seriously. But yeah, it was an amazing time and place to grow. Baseball was great back then. It was really, really competitive. We had some great ball players back then.
Yes. And you jogged my memory in 8th grade when I would have my students write about their dream, talk about, nothing happens without a dream. Do you remember what you wrote that year in 8th grade?
I don't remember exactly what I wrote.
Because I was curious if it was about baseball or not. Since it was in the 4th grade, it probably was.
It probably was about baseball, because I've always had a little bit of a problem with a one-track mind. And so it probably was about baseball, but I don't remember exactly what I wrote.
Yeah. Well, so you made it to Sumiton Christian then, and just give us a highlight maybe. I know 4 years there and winning state championship, but do you have something in particular that kind of stands out above everything else during that time at Sumiton Christian?
Obviously, winning a state championship is a huge memory that you're never going to lose that. The teammates and all that.
Right.
I really though that first year I had to since I had transferred I had to sit out and not play, and I think that was actually a really really good thing for me. A lot of people saw that as a negative. I only got to play 3 years of high school sports, but what happened is that my brother being in middle school and being practicing with middle school teams, and even though he couldn't play either, and then practicing with varsity, and then I would just stay all day after school and practice. So I would practice with varsity, and then I would practice with the JV, and then I'd practice with the middle school. And so from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 8 o'clock at night, I was just doing baseball all day. And again, I mean, that's one of those things where you'd be like, oh, that's terrible. But I got to sit there with those coaches and just soak up information and just to absorb all of that and take it all in. And I never saw it as work. I never saw it as practice. I just saw it as, man, I get to do what I love to do.
Sure.
And it's really weird because you would think, oh yeah, winning a state title was amazing, and that was, but really I look back at the practices and the times with the teammates as the most important part to me.
Sure. Relationship building.
Right.
Yeah. And so great success there, as we've already said, state championship, MVP of the state, all-state honors, and then the opportunity to play for the legend of baseball at Mississippi State, Ron Polk. So were you recruited by others, and what made you decide on Mississippi State?
So I was always kind of undersized. Right, like when I graduated, I was like 6'2", 160 pounds. So I graduated at 17. So my freshman year of college, I actually shot up and grew. So my recruiting back then didn't happen as early as it does now, because you didn't have cell phones, social media, email, all that stuff was kind of very primitive, just starting. So I was recruited. I talked. South Alabama was actually the first school that offered me. I'd spoken with Troy. Southeast Missouri State saw me somewhere. They were setting up a visit, but basically between my junior and senior year after we'd won state, I was doing a bunch of showcase camps and clinics, and I had been in Florida training actually as a hitter / middle infielder because there had been some junior colleges that had offered me as a dual position player, and I was like, well, I'm just going to work on both, But then that summer, I'd kind of had another growth spurt. I was throwing a lot harder, and I didn't really know how hard I was throwing because radar technology, you had to be at a big place to actually know that stuff. And so I ended up going to Starkville. I kind of argued with my parents about going because I was like, there's no way they're going to recruit me. South Alabama's already offered. It looks like a good situation. And because I'd already been to a lot of South Alabama camps, I really enjoyed the campus and that team. And so I kind of already had my mind made up. Well, then I get to Starkville and I throw a bullpen, and the guy catching me couldn't catch me. And so they swapped catchers, and the other high school guy, he couldn't catch me. And it was kind of weird. I didn't know what was going on. So then they had one of the catchers from Mississippi State get down and catch me. Because I guess they were worried I was going to hurt somebody or something. And I wasn't throwing insanely. I was only throwing like 88 to 90 that day. Mm-hmm. But the ball was moving really well and all this. And everybody left and had gone to lunch. And the pitching coach, Russ McNichol, who just retired from being the pitching coach at the University of Memphis. So Coach Mack was like, hey, everybody's gone to the CAF for lunch. Ride with me. And so I ride with him, and we get to talking. And then throughout the rest of that, I guess it was a 5-day camp. Every time I did anything, he was always right there, and Coach Polk was always right there. And then at the end, they kind of had all these lists posted. I can't really remember all this. They had this list posted, and by my name, there was in red ink, there was a star, and one other guy, there was a star. And Coach Polk one of his assistants, other assistants, came and grabbed me and said, "Hey, coach wants to see you before you leave." And so I went over there and I talked to him, shook his hand, and he does that with everybody. I mean, he's the most amazing. I still get Christmas cards, letters. He's the most amazing human being I've ever been around. Truly dedicated to his players and I mean, he sees us as his sons. It's amazing. He knows my son's name. You know, he knows my wife's name. It's unbelievable. So he calls me over and we talk, and he says, you know, make sure we have your information, all this stuff. And then about a week later, I get a phone call. And the next week I get another phone call, and it's obvious at this point I'm being recruited. So then they set up a visit. I go in October. I missed my second day ever of school to do that in my whole life. And we go to Starkville, and they offer me a scholarship, and it was kind of history from there. I mean, you can't say no to playing for Ron Polk.
Sure.
I mean, he is the godfather of him and Skip Berkman at LSU. I mean, they created major college baseball and the atmosphere that we know now.
That's right.
And Duty Noble Field, I actually got to go back for the first time in like 15 years a few months ago, and to see what it is now. I mean, I thought what we played in was incredible, but holy cow, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. I don't know how those guys keep their sanity in those in the environment that they're in now, because it's bigger, and it's a bigger environment than even you would experience in the minor leagues. Sure. The things that they have access to, it's incredible. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable.
You had a great career there. You get drafted, and so that had to be a thrill to do that. Got about 5 minutes more or so. So we'll have to kind of run. We'll have to have you back. How's that?
Okay.
But you got drafted by the Reds,
That's
correct? Right. And so give us, if you can, within, and I hate to do this to you, but within 2 or 3 minutes of that, kind of that experience, if you can encapsulate that. And I know that's asking a lot.
Yeah, so, I mean, not everything at Mississippi State was smooth. I mean, there were hiccups. There was a coaching change, obviously, at the end. When I was drafted by the Reds, I was probably at one of the lowest points in as far as confidence and career was going. The first year was definitely a struggle. The second year, I became a starter, got advanced to Dayton, which is an incredible place to play. Played for the Dragons, and things were going pretty well. I was a starter for most of that season, and then the next year in spring training, I get released. After I get released, I come back home, and the guy, his name is Shane Kelly. Everybody called him Shug. He actually lived around here for a while and trained people. He ended up being Josh Hamilton's spiritual advisor that kind of helped take care of him while he was still playing professional ball. I went and trained with him. He was at JSU at the time until I had another opportunity. I ended up re-signing with Minnesota and finishing my affiliated ball professional career with Minnesota. And my last year with them actually was an all-star. And it's kind of crazy because my son now will see these guys and be like, do you know this guy? Do you know this guy? And there's several of them that I played with on that all-star team. And that I played with in the minor leagues that are still playing. They're older now. They're the old guard now in Major League Baseball. But there's several of them that I played with that are still playing, and it was really, really cool experience to get to do that. The younger kids always ask me, like, did you just not want to go to the major leagues?
Right.
I'm like, no, I just didn't want millions of dollars and all that. I chose not to have that.
Sure.
But
I loved riding the bus and the van and staying at people's houses.
That's right.
I loved all that.
Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches instead of steak is great. I'm totally fine now. But I mean, it is a business, and it is a cutthroat business, and it's one of those things you don't really realize. You know, even in your head, you're trying to convince yourself that, if I just do well, I'm going to keep advancing, and it's not always that way. Mm-hmm. But it was an amazing experience. The people that you get to meet, the teammates that you have, and the places that you get to live and see, completely different parts of this country. Baseball was a gift from God that unlocked the world to me, that I would have never experienced had it not been for, I'm about to get emotional again, for the coaches and the people that he placed in my life. None of that would have happened. Mm-hmm. It unlocked all of it.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. So it's been a great gift to you, still is, and it will be to others through you, because now you're, as we say, paying it forward or things have come full circle. You've already been doing that on some level, but having the same group of kids over a period of time will really enhance that, just like Coach Blair did for you and so many others.
That's right.
So you left minor league ball, and we'll wrap up with this. You came back because you've got a family, you've got a wife, and you got children,
Yes.
and so you came back here to be more, not that you weren't dedicated before, but when you're in minor league ball, you got to go where you got to go and do
you're
what you got to
everywhere.
do. And so
And
you came back
nowhere.
here to focus more on that with your family. Talk a little bit about your family then.
So yes, I've been married now for 10, going on 11 years to Kelly. She was Jordan that graduated from Curry. She has more all-state titles than I ever could have hoped to, because she was amazing at every sport, and I was just good at one. And she still swears that she's a better athlete, and so does everybody that we know swears that she was a better athlete than me. But we've been married for almost 11 years this November, and she's the head volleyball coach at Spain Park. When we first got married, I was still in the minor leagues, and she was in Montgomery coaching at St. James. But she's been the head coach at Spain Park for this will be her 10th year. They won a state title 2 years ago, and then lost to Hoover in the state title 3 years ago. And she actually was just named. She got several Coach of the Year honors, but she was just named the NFHS, National Federation of High School Sports, Coach of the Year for the 21-22 season. She's done an amazing job, and honestly, I look at the things that I want to do in my program now, and I see a lot of things that she did, and the wisdom that she has, and the things that she has done for her girls, and the relationships that she has built, and the culture and the environment that she's created. It's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I tell her that she might have built a monster, and you just have to make sure that it's a monster you can live with.
Sure.
But she is unbelievable at what she does. So dedicated, so committed, and she loves those girls. And together we do have a son, and he is Richard Russell III, and we call him Russ. And he's a handful. He'll be a third grader at Sumiton Christian this year, and it's really cool because I'll get to. He said something to me yesterday. He said you'll get to eat lunch with me every day. Because part of as an assistant principal, I'll have to be in the lunchroom at most days during the time he eats lunch. And I said, yeah, you think that's cool right now,
Right.
but probably 5th, 6th grade, you're not going to think that's cool anymore.
Right.
Right now, he thinks it's the greatest thing in the world. And but even last night after the banquet, when Coach Blair left, we got home and he was kind of pouting and sad. I was like, what's wrong? He said, Coach is gone. And it was amazing that he even was able to, it's amazing what they actually pick up on and recognize. And we're in the baseball world with him now. We actually go this weekend. We've got a tournament, and we're doing our first kid pitch tournament. So as a former pitcher, I'm terrified of what my son will do. But he's left-handed, so I wasn't blessed to be left-handed. He's a lefty, so it's going to be this weekend's going to be interesting and terrifying, and I'm sure there's going to be kids hit and be crying. It's the first time they've ever done it.
Sure.
It's a brand new world.
Sure.
But we're excited to see what that's going to lead to, and really as far as for his friends and his teammates and the kids in his class and his grade to build that culture of baseball back, or enhance it. I'd say build it back. Coach Blair, you can't do much better than he did, but to enhance it and try to grow it for those younger kids, because that's always really been, especially the younger, it's been a real passion of mine. That's why I did the training for that age and those younger guys. I'm just so excited to have this opportunity. I'm so blessed. That's all I can say.
Well, we're excited too. We believe it's a blessing as well, and for Sumiton Christian specifically, but for the whole area in general. We're so glad about that, and we're honored today that you would choose to take the time to do this interview. And so now you have to sign have to sign
the sign.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, where do you want me to sign it specifically?
That's entirely up to you.
I'll go the other side. All right. All right.
Well, Ricky, it's been an honor to speak with you and to renew our acquaintance. We get to talk to each other periodically here and there, but to think about going all the way back, as you mentioned, yourself and then Al and then Coach Ware, all three guys I coached. And I was just thinking of that sitting here, almost made me tear up, that. So here we are, and the names that are mentioned, and this, Al being the one who has organized all of this, and you coming on, and then hearing you say what Coach Ware said. And what a blessing for me, and I mean that, and it's an honor for us to talk with you today, and I am very certain that this won't be our last conversation. So this is Greg Tinker for Coach Ricky Bowen saying, good day from the lead.
The Lead, sponsored by Hospital Discount Pharmacy, Lavish Boutique, Lavish Coffee, Jasper Veterinary Clinic, Jasper Bone and Joint, and Carl Cannon Chevrolet Buick GMC.